Ellie.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I am good. I'm very excited. Number one, because you are here sat in my kitchen.
I am.
This is a real interview.
This must be quite a novelty.
It is. I'm not looking at you in a little screen, trying to make sure our connection stays the whole time.
Yeah, if that was happening now, this would be a bit too much like Black Mirror.
Oh, God. It would. Let's hope that doesn't happen.
No, thank you.
Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
No, you're very welcome. You're so eloquent.
I try my best.
So, at the point of this recording, it is Gay Pride Month, and I'm very excited and very proud because my gorgeous, gorgeous godsister has very recently come out as gay, and she's agreed to talk on this podcast about her experience. So, Ellie, when did you realise that you were gay?
I think it was something that I'd always kind of deep down known was a part of me, but it was a lot of just not wanting it to be true in a way. So it took a while of like having that process of like self-acceptance before I kind of like properly realised. But I think I was about 15. I was in my last year of secondary school. But like I said, I think it's always been there. It just took me a long time to kind of like really see it.
Okay. So you say there was a period where you almost didn't want it to be true. Was that more about worrying about other people more than worrying about yourself? Or was it something you were confused about, scared about? What was it?
Well, it was pretty much everything you said. It was a lot of confusion. And I think it was mainly what other people would think was my main concern. Just because I think the secondary school I was at, the environment didn't feel very, like, friendly to that sort of thing. Luckily, I came out in a sixth form that was filled with a lot more, like, mature people and more like-minded people. But I think it was mainly what people would think and just, I don't know, people talking, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you were quite nervous when you first came out to friends and family. How did you find the response?
I generally, like, overwhelmingly quite positive. I've been very, very lucky in that I've not really had that bad of an experience with anyone with coming out, which is really, really lucky because a lot of people will have at least a couple, which is, you know, so sad that that does happen. But I've been very, very lucky. Everyone's been, like, incredibly accepting of me, which is, like I said, very, very lucky in this day and age.
That is very lucky, I think, because there is still a lot of taboo and stigma, isn't there, surrounding, even though it's completely ridiculous because there's nothing more natural in the world as, you know, being in love and knowing what it is you love. You obviously, you have a very mature head on your shoulders.
Oh, thank you.
You're so welcome.
Thank you so much.
You are so self-aware of this, and I think it's wonderful that you can talk out about it because there's a lot of people your age and younger and even older that still feel very trapped in being able to talk about this. Would you have anything to say to those people?
I think it is such a process, and I don't think initially, I think people from the outside don't really realise how much of a process it is. It's not like you wake up one morning, kind of realise your sexuality or gender identity or whatever, and then you like come out the next day. It's such a long process of kind of accepting that that's what it is, because you just kind of live in a society as kind of progressive as it's been in the last couple of years. It's still not perfect, where being straight is normal. And so it's a lot of just kind of unlearning everything you've been fed about what is normal, what isn't normal. And I think just being gentle with yourself, because you're pretty much just figuring out who you are. And that's such a hard process as it is, let alone doing it in a society that kind of tells you it's wrong. So I think it is just give yourself time and be gentle with yourself, because it's a lot to kind of go through.
I'm just blown away.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you guys.
You could definitely be like an advocate or like a spokeswoman.
She read me a book once when I was driving us here, funny enough, to the Isle of Wight, and she was like an Audible book reader. And I just was so taken away.
The book was shocking.
The book was awful. We won't talk about it on the
It was so bad.
platform, but Yeah, and honestly, it was like listening to an audiobook.
Guys, stop.
Okay, like, let's not make our head get too big.
Yeah.
She does have to fit through the door.
Yeah.
So, for you personally, have there been any mental health implications because of the process?
I think it's definitely added a new layer to kind of initial kind of like, because I've kind of had a brush with anxieties and things like that in the past, and it's kind of just been one whole layer that's been added on top of it, because it was just general anxieties mainly about school and exams, that sort of thing, but it was pretty much just always there, always thinking about, even if I seemed relatively calm, it was still like, oh, like, you don't know what's happening sort of thing, you're having all these feelings that are so confusing, and it's just pretty much just wouldn't let me rest. So it was a lot of just back and forth with myself for a while, but it just pretty much just added to the anxiety that I kind of was having. It was not the most pleasant, but...
Is there generally support for that specifically?
I think it's becoming more common. It's becoming a lot more common. I actually did a talk about a month ago within the like Essex Police kind of like Pride in Youth sort of thing, which was specifically targeting support for mental health of young members of the community, the LGBT community. And I think more and more so there is more support out there within schools or charities or like on social media and that sort of thing, which is really, really good and like refreshing thing to see, because, you know, say like even 10 years ago there wouldn't have been any of that. So I think it is becoming more widely available, which is like a really good thing to see.
As an 18-year-old about to embark on university, which is very exciting.
What
is it that you're studying?
I'm studying media and communications.
Super exciting. I mean, there's going to be a lot of anxiety there anyway. Uni's a big step, moving away from home, from a very close-knit family. Does the fact that you've recently come out add a layer of anxiety to going to uni, or do you feel quite positive that it's going to be a very accepting and welcoming environment?
Well, I think where I'm going to uni, which is in London, generally is quite a diverse place, especially filled with lots of like-minded people around my age. And I think specifically going into the first year with a lot of people who are going to be around my age, I think the majority, I mean, obviously not all the time, but like the majority are going to have the same sort of like values and beliefs that I do about different things, specifically, you know, about the LGBT community and things like that. But I think you're always going to come across people who have got these like bigoted views for whatever reason, for that could be the way they're brought up or whatever. I think that's always going to be the case wherever you go, really. You could be in the most diverse place and you'd still find someone who thinks it's wrong for whatever reason. But I generally am feeling really positive about that, specifically because I think I'm going to an area that thinks very similarly to how I do. So yeah.
I mean, have you personally come up against any bigoted comments? Have you felt anyone treating you differently, or people not knowing how to treat you since coming out?
No. Generally, everyone's been like so like supportive of it, and they've always, for whatever reason, everyone's always known what to say, which is quite rare. But everyone's been so wonderful, which I'm so lucky for, and it's never been a case of everyone. But I've been really lucky because everyone's been really supportive and, like I said, have just known what to say, which is really lucky because not everyone has the same experience, unfortunately.
I have to say, it is really refreshing hearing a story where someone can say, I've had a really positive experience, because we have such a long way to go yet when it comes to inclusion and equality and accepting diversity. So it is lovely to hear of a positive experience. And it must be reassuring to some of our listeners that is becoming something that happens now. People are having positive experiences. Yeah,
no, definitely. It's so good to see, especially how far the LGBT community has had to go just to get the most basic rights. It's good to see that acceptance is finally happening properly.
are there any specific groups or charities or organisations that are set up to help people within the community?
There's definitely like certain charities. I can't name many off the top of my head because I'm just not. I'm fairly useless. But there are definitely specific charities that are kind of garnered towards the needs of the LGBT community because of how different their experiences are to, say, like heterosexual like teenagers or whoever going through like a mental health crisis. That it's definitely quite an individual experience that people in the community go through. So that I know for a fact there's definitely helplines, charities, like different organisations that are set up in order to help people specifically who are part of the community that can just kind of refer to issues that people who maybe wouldn't have to deal with, that sort of thing.
Okay. Well, we will make sure that some of those helplines are in the show notes for this podcast as well for anyone listening. If you could say anything now to the listeners, what would it be?
What, just about anything?
No.
Okay.
No, if you could say anything to our listeners now about mental health or the LGBT community, what would it be?
I think if you're in the process of questioning your sexuality or gender identity, or coming out or anything like that, just give yourself a lot of time and a lot of space to kind of heal, because it's a long process, and I think one that people don't really prepare for, because you pretty much have to come out for the rest of your life to everyone that you meet. So, and that's one thing I didn't necessarily take into account, but I think just giving yourself time within like self-acceptance is way more important than like coming out to anyone beforehand, after that. So I think just, yeah, be gentle and it'll all be alright, I promise.
I do now have a question. Hannah asked if there was anything you'd like to say to the listeners, and you said about anything. I'd like to know if you do have what you would like to say that wasn't about this.
Yeah, what if you could say literally
If I could say literally anything, oh
what
God.
would it be?
Christ. It's too broad.
Any general advice you could give to the general people listening to this podcast, what would it be?
What, just general life advice?
General life advice.
From the lesbian.
Oh my God, that should be the title of your podcast. General advice
From the lesbian. Lesbian life advice.
It's gotta be.
General advice. Water your plants. Water your plants. Buy some tapestries and lay out in the sun.
I mean, you heard her. Water your plants, buy tapestries, and lay out in the sun. With sun cream.
With sun cream, I was just about to add that.
I mean, that's genuinely good
And stay
advice.
hydrated as well.
Stay hydrated. Good advice. To be honest, I now want a whole episode of Ellie's advice.
I think I need to be a bit of an agony aunt.
Water your plants.
Please water your plants. They are screaming for water.
And on that note,